Carl Dean Switzer was an American actor, professional dog breeder and hunting guide. Switzer began his career as a child actor in the mid-1930s, appearing in the Our Gang short subjects series as Alfalfa, one of the series' most popular and best-remembered characters. After leaving the series in 1940, Switzer struggled to find substantial roles due to typecasting. As an adult, he appeared mainly in bit parts and B-movies. He later became a dog breeder and hunting guide. Switzer married in 1954 and had one son before divorcing in 1956. In January 1959, he was fatally shot by an acquaintance over a dispute about money. Early life and family. Switzer was born in Paris, Illinois, the second son and last of the 4 children of George Frederick Switzer and his wife Gladys C. Shanks, both of German ancestry. He was named Carl after a member of the Switzer family and Dean after many relatives on his grandmother's side. He and his brother, Harold, became famous in their hometown for their musical talent and performances. Both sang and could play a number of instruments. Career, Our Gang. In 1934, the Switzers traveled to California to visit family members. While sightseeing, they went to Hal Roach Studios. Following a public tour, 8-year-old Harold and 6-year-old Carl entered the Hal Roach Studios open to the public cafeteria, the Our Gang Café copyright, and began an impromptu performance. Producer Hal Roach was present and was impressed. He signed both brothers to appear in Our Gang. Harold was given 2 nicknames, Slim and Deadpan, while Carl was dubbed Alfalfa. The brothers first appeared in the 1935 Our Gang short Beginner's Luck. By the end of the year, Alfalfa was one of the main characters, while Harold had relegated to the role of a background player. Although Carl was an experienced singer and musician, his character Alfalfa was often called upon to sing off-key renditions of popular songs, most often those of Bing Crosby. Alfalfa also sported cowlicks. By the end of 1937, Alfalfa had supplanted George Spanky McFarland, the series' nominal star, in popularity. While the boys got along, their fathers argued constantly over their sons' screen time and salaries. Switzer's best friend among the Our Gang actors was Tommy Bond, who played his on-screen nemesis Butch. In Bond's words, he and Switzer became good friends because, neither of us would replace the other since we played opposites. However, Switzer was known for being abrasive and difficult on the set. He would often play cruel jokes on the other actors and hold up filming with his antics. In 1938 the production rights for Our Gang were sold to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and the first 2 years of the MGM-produced series entries focused heavily on Alfalfa and his family. Adult years. Switzer's tenure on Our Gang ended in 1940, when he was 12. His first role after leaving the series was as co-star in the 1941 comedy Regular Fellas. The next year, he had a supporting role in Mrs. Wiggs of the Cabbage Patch. Switzer continued to appear in films in various supporting roles, including in Johnny Doughboy, Going My Way, and The Great Mike. Switzer had an uncredited role as Iggy in the 1943 film The Human Comedy. Switzer's last starring roles were in a brief series of imitation Bowery Boys movies. He reprised his Alfalfa character, complete with comically sour vocals, in PRC's Gas House Kids comedies in 1946 and 1947. By this time Switzer was downplaying his earlier Our Gang work. In his 1946 resume, he referred to the films generically as MGM short product. Switzer had a small part in the 1946 Christmas film It's a Wonderful Life as Mary Hatch's date at a high school dance in the film's beginning. In the 1954 musical film White Christmas, his photo was used to depict an army buddy of lead characters Wallace and Davis, and also the brother of the female leads the Haynes sisters. In the 1950s, Switzer turned to television. Between 1952 to 1955, he made 6 appearances on The Roy Rogers Show. He also guest-starred in an episode of the American science fiction anthology series Science Fiction Theater, and The George Burns and Gracie Allen Show. In 1953 and 1954, Switzer co-starred in 3 William A. Wellman-directed films, Island in the Sky and The High and the Mighty, both starring John Wayne, and Track of the Cat starring Robert Mitchum. In 1956, he co-starred in the Bowery Boys film Dig That Uranium, followed by a bit part as a Hebrew slave in Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments. Switzer's final film role was in the film drama The Defiant Ones. Besides acting, Switzer bred and trained hunting dogs and guided hunting expeditions. Among his notable clients were Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, James Stewart and Henry Fonda. Personal life: in early 1954, Switzer went on a blind date with Diantha Collingwood, heiress of grain elevator empire Collingwood Grain. Collingwood had moved with her mother and sister to California in 1953 because her sister wanted to become an actress. Switzer and Collingwood got along well and married in Las Vegas 3 months later. In 1956, with his money running out and Diantha pregnant, his mother-in-law offered them a farm near Pretty Prairie, Kansas, west of Wichita. A son, Justin Lance Collingwood Switzer, was born to them that year. However, they divorced in 1957. In 1987, former Our Gang co-star Spanky McFarland recalled a meeting with Switzer when they spoke about the farm. "The last time I saw Carl was 1957. It was a tough time for me and him. I was starting a tour of theme parks and county fairs in the Midwest. Carl had married this girl whose father owned a pretty good-size farm near Wichita. When I came through town, he heard about it and called. He told me he was helping to run the farm, but he finally had to put a radio on the tractor while he was out there plowing. Knowing Carl, I knew that wasn't going to last. He may have come from Paris, Illinois, but he wasn't a farmer. We hadn't seen each other since we left the gang. So we had lunch. We talked about all the things you'd expect. And then I never saw him again. He looked pretty much the same. He was just Carl Switzer, a kind of cocky, a little antsy, and I thought to myself he hadn't changed that much. He still talked big. He just grew up." In January 1958, Switzer was getting into his car in front of a bar in Studio City, when a bullet smashed through the window and struck him in the upper right arm. The gunman was never caught. That December, Switzer was arrested in Sequoia National Forest for cutting down 15 pine trees. He was sentenced to a year's probation and ordered to pay a $225 fine. Death. Switzer had agreed to train a hunting dog for Moses Samuel Stilts. The dog was lost, having run after a bear, and Switzer offered a $50 reward for its return. A few days later, a man found the dog and brought it to the Studio City bar where Switzer then worked. Switzer paid the man $35 and bought him $15 worth of drinks. Several days later, Switzer and his friend Jack Pyatt, a 37-year-old unit still photographer, decided that Moses Stilts should repay Switzer the reward money for the dog. Shortly before 7 p.m. that evening, January 21, 1959, Switzer and Pyatt went to Rita Corrigan's home in Mission Hills, where Stilts was staying, to collect the money they felt he owed him. Stilts later testified before the coroner's jury that Switzer had banged on the front door, saying, "Let me in, or I'll kick in the door." Once inside, he and Stilts began to argue. Switzer said, "I want that $50 you owe me now, and I mean now." When Stilts refused to give it to him, the men began to fight. Switzer allegedly struck Stilts with a glass-domed clock, which caused him to bleed from his left eye. Stilts retreated to his bedroom and returned with a .38 caliber revolver. Switzer grabbed the gun, resulting in a shot being fired that struck the ceiling. Switzer forced Stilts into a closet, although Stilts had regained his revolver. Switzer allegedly pulled a switchblade knife and screamed, "I'm going to kill you." Fearing Switzer was about to attack, Stilts shot him in the groin. Switzer suffered massive internal bleeding and was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. Controversy: since Switzer had allegedly pulled a knife, the shooting was judged to be self-defense. However, during the inquest regarding Switzer's death, it was revealed that what was reported as a hunting knife was in fact only a penknife. It had been found by crime scene investigators under his body, but without even a blade exposed. On January 25, 2001, A third witness came forward and gave his version. Tom Corrigan, 56-year-old son of Western movie star Ray Crash Corrigan and stepson of Moses Stilts, was present the night Switzer was killed. "It was more like murder," Corrigan told reporters. He said he heard the knock on the front door, and Switzer said Western Union for Bud Stilts. Corrigan's mother, Rita Corrigan, opened the door to find a drunk and demanding Switzer complaining about a perceived, month-old debt. Switzer entered the house followed by Jack Pyatt and stated he was going to beat up Stilts. Stilts confronted Switzer with a .38 caliber revolver in his hand. Corrigan said that Switzer grabbed the revolver and Switzer struggled over it. Pyatt broke a glass-domed clock over Stilts's head, causing Stilts's eye to swell shut. During the struggle, a shot was fired into the ceiling and Corrigan was struck in the leg by a fragment. Corrigan's two younger sisters ran to a neighbor's house to call for help. "Well, we shot Tommy, enough of this," he remembers Switzer saying, just before Switzer and Pyatt started to leave the house. Corrigan had just stepped out the front door, when he heard a second shot behind him. He turned and saw Switzer sliding down the wall with a surprised look on his face. Stilts had shot him. Corrigan said he saw a closed pen knife at Switzer's side, which he presumed fell out of his pocket or his hand. He then saw his stepfather shove Pyatt against the kitchen counter and threatened to kill him too. As Pyatt begged for his life, they heard emergency sirens. Corrigan thought this was the only reason Stilts did not kill Pyatt. Corrigan said his stepfather lied in his account of the event before the coroner's jury. Corrigan says a Los Angeles Police Department detective interviewed him and asked if he would testify before the judge. Corrigan agreed to, but he was never called before the court. He didn't have to kill him, Corrigan says. Burial: Carl Switzer was interred at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Hollywood, California. He was killed on the same day that Cecil B. DeMille died and received only minor notice in most newspapers, since DeMille's obituary dominated the columns. Selected filmography. References. External links. Carl Switzer at the Internet Movie Database, Carl Switzer at AllMovie, When Young Stars Burn Out at MSN.com, Carl Switzer at the Crime Library, Carl Switzer at Find a Grave.